If you have been spending prolonged periods of time sitting down, or even worse, sleeping on your side, chances are that your hip flexors are really short and that your mobility is impaired. Now, to avoid getting injured over the course of time, especially when it comes to getting older and reduced quality of life through lack of mobility, we will have to work on our hip flexors, which is exactly what we're going to be doing today. If you're not new here, then you know that we always start with the easiest exercises first, which is what we're going to be doing now, and increasing the intensity of each exercise over time. Starting out with the easiest one, the lunge. All we need to do from here is push our pelvis forward. Now, there are two different things that we can adjust here. One, we can have our hip flexors get more of the stretch. If, however, our hip flexors are a little bit more loose than our quadriceps, we can adjust that movement by pulling in our leg, which is going to move the stretch from our hip flexors down to our quadriceps. And you can switch it up from here, push forward, release the tension in your hip flexors, and afterwards you can hold down and pull your leg in and push forward from here to move the stretch further down. Now, of course, we're going to be doing this on both sides. Moving on, this next exercise is amazing because we can build multiple levels into it depending on your mobility. Starting with level 1, we're going to bring both our hands to our heels and push forward. Now, we're stretching our quadriceps, our hip flexors, and our abdominals. You need to keep in mind that our hip flexors are not a closed system, meaning there are multiple other muscles that work in conjunction with our hip flexors. And even if our hip flexors are super loose, if the other muscles are not, we're going to have some impaired mobility. And when it comes to our anterior chain, that would be our quadriceps and our abdominals, especially the lower ones. So moving on from level number 1, if you do not feel any sort of stretch, we can go into level number 2, down on our elbows. Now, keep in mind that we have to actively push upwards by flexing our lower spine, our spinal erectors, and our glutes to get as much range of motion or lengthening the muscle as we can. Now, if you move to level number 2 and you're not feeling any stretches anymore, then you can move to level number 3, which is just lying down fully. And of course, we are actively pushing our hips upwards. Now, as a bonus, and that is only for people who can do level number 3 without any problems, we can increase the intensity dramatically by raising our knees and pushing upwards even more. You can even put your hands below your back to hold for a little bit longer. And I would suggest for most of the static stretches to go for 20 or 30 seconds per stretch, which is, according to most studies, the most effective time to have the tension of pulling and stretching. 60 seconds has not been shown to yield more benefits than 30 seconds per stretch when it comes to static mobility. Many of you know that I'm a big proponent of loaded stretching, and for this exact exercise, it is the perfect move to add some weight. And we're of course going to start with the lowest weight possible that is still going to give us some benefits. Now you're going to move back all the way to the wall with your lower leg, keeping your knee on the ground, and we're going to go into the same lunge position we had before, but this time with a wall behind us. This is going to help us increase the stretch drastically. Before we get into the load, I want to show you what we're going to be doing. We have one foot in the front, and if you have listened before, you know that depending on the angle, here hip flexor and here quadriceps. So we're going to combine the quadriceps and the hip flexor stretch together. You can either move dynamically and quickly, or you can hold at the front for 30, at the back for 30. Extend the leg, hold, and switch. Now, we're going to add some shoulder and chest mobility, but only as a bonus, because if we keep the weight up here and we keep it in contact with the wall and move forward, we're going to have a spinal extension, meaning an arch in our back. And what you're going to notice from here, we are pressing down to push us forward even more, to have a little bit more stretch. When it comes to this one, we're going to move back, hold a little bit, we're going to move forward, hold a little bit. So the next exercise, also a loaded one, we're going to start out in a seated position, legs apart. We're going to grip ourselves some kind of weight behind our head, and all we're going to do from here is bend forward and sit up again. Now we are gonna use the weight to push you a little further down into the stretch than you would be usually able without the weight. And sit up. Depending on how high you have the weight, you're gonna have less stretch or more stretch. Meaning if I move all the way forward, I'm gonna have a lot more pull. What's really important though is that we do not touch down with the weight. Let it pull you into the stretch. And sit up again. Slowly, let it pull you into the stretch. And sit up again. Repeat the process multiple times. For the dynamic stretches, we're gonna go for 12 to 16 repetitions per set and do this for 2 or 3 sets in total. Now, hip mobility is not just about flexibility. It's also about the strength to be able to move into different positions, which is why we're going to do some dynamic movements without weights. We're going to start out in a deep squat position. If you don't know how to deep squat yet, I have multiple videos you can check out for that, but we're going to start out in this position, and we're going to be doing knee touches to the middle, left side, right side, right side, and switch it up. You can put your hands behind your head for a little bit of extra core activation because you need to balance a little bit more, or you can help out and compensate by bringing your arms forward. Now, we're going to move this one into a crossover and repeat this also multiple times before we do an internal rotation on one side and an external rotation on the other side, and additionally turn sideways for some lumbar and gluteal mobility. And sit up, use your core strength, move sideways, and repeat multiple times before we increase the range of motion of this exact exercise by bending forward, sitting up again, bending forward to lengthen our spinal erectors and our glutes even more, and repeat multiple times. And for our final exercise, we are going to add some hip thrusts to strengthen our posterior chain to keep us strong enough to be able to push more and more and more into different hip mobility stretches. Push forward and sit back up. Push forward and sit back up. This will be by far the most efficient hip mobility work you have done, and if you keep it going for longer periods of time, you're going to notice that you are getting rid of all the hip mobility problems you have, be it back pain, be it hip joint pain, or be it just the lack of mobility and the tightness keeping you from going into positions that you would enjoy going into. With that said, that's sadly all the time I have for you today. I have a couple of classes to teach, but I will see you tomorrow because you know it, new videos every day. Captain Cairo, peace out.